I think it's becoming predominant. We have customers that specifically want those products more so than what we were used to. We obviously used to just get people wanting grass-fed or grain-fed, but I think now people are asking even more questions on whether it be grass or regenerative.
This is the Australian Butchers Guild podcast, brought to you by Meat and Livestock Australia, the podcast for passionate butchers.
G'day meat lovers, I'm Doug Piper and it's time for another ABG podcast. Over the years I've been fortunate to meet some fantastic butchers and I've made some great mates along the way. We've all got the same thing in common, a passion for the trade and all striving for the same result at the end of the day. One shop I've driven past on a lot of occasions and only stopped a couple of times was a shop in the middle of Branxton in the Hunter Valley. In those days, the shop was old, a bit run down, heritage listed, making renovations nearly impossible and very expensive. A couple of weeks ago, I was going past and noticed the shop was looking like it had been tidied up a little bit. So I chucked the U in and went back to have a look. As I got closer to the shop, I noticed new black frames in the windows and door, a coat of Dulux on the walls and awning, new signage and a different layout inside. I couldn't resist it and I went in and wow, what a transformation. The shop is beautifully fitted out with new cabinets, benches, and I would say one of the best tiled floors I've seen in a small butcher shop, and it really lends itself to the heritage of the business. The shop had a great range of dry-aged meats and one of the best presented range of charcuterie that is made on the premises and a pile of beef jerky you couldn't jump over. It's a real credit to the business owner Michael Robinson for keeping this shop alive and for becoming another statistic. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks for coming along, mate. I got to say, I really enjoyed walking into your shop the other day. Like I said, I've seen it a few times with previous owners. I don't think I've ever been in it since you've owned it, but it was such a pleasure to walk into and just to see what you've done with it. It's a real credit to you, mate.
Thank you.
You're also a chef as well as a butcher. What made you jump the line and become a butcher, going into the meat trade?
Yes, I am a chef by trade. I was a chef for... I've got to think about this one. About 20 years, I think, was my career in the kitchen. And working in kitchens, I always sort of worked on the meat section, cooking of meat, sauces, etc., etc. Lots of charcuterie, small goods and stuff like that. So that sort of is a lifestyle that in those days, it's not very sustainable, I guess. Working that many hours, if you've got a young family and stuff, it really starts to take its toll. I guess there was always in the back of my mind, what's next? There was never any sort of real intention to open a butcher shop that was never the goal at that point. That just sort of fell into place just all by chance about 7 years ago, and yeah, here we are now.
7 years, wow, time's gone fast, hasn't it?
It has, yeah, very fast.
So the shop's in Branxton in the Hunter Valley, so you obviously worked in that region, you live and worked as a chef in the region? Yeah,
so originally I was from Sydney, did most of my cooking down there, then lived in London for a few years and then LA for a couple of years after that. I then came back to Sydney and did a bit more cooking, and then for family reasons we moved up to like the Newcastle area, and I was then cooking in the Hunter Valley. There's a bit more of a food scene and restaurants with all the wineries and stuff out there, so it sort of led me out that direction, and then just sort of fell in love with the area and I've never left, and that was in about 2013, I think, or 2014. I moved up this way, so and just sort of never really had any desire to move back to Sydney. I got used to it not being so busy, I guess, and everywhere, and just love that sort of bit more chilled lifestyle that comes along with living in the country.
Yeah, it's got a lot going for it, living out that way. What made you go into the shop itself?
I was working in a restaurant, and I'd finished up. I was due to finish up in a few weeks' time, and somebody came in to see me about buying vegetables in the shop because he had something happening in Branxton. He had a large vegetable plot, 10-acre vegetable plot, and he was really trying to push this vegetable business. And I sort of said to him, look, I'm not actually working here for much longer. And he said, oh, that's interesting. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And he sort of said he's got a few opportunities in the town of Branxton because he had a few different businesses and stuff. And different properties that he owned. And one of them was the butcher shop. And he sort of said, we'd really like to have, someone in there that we know and can work with and really grow a butcher shop that, becomes a destination sort of shop and really elevates the town. So literally happened like that. And I sort of said, oh, that sounds like a challenge. And he sort of bought the building. I bought the business. And yeah, we just sort of went in and did it that way.
And the shop, like I think you said it was heritage listed, How hard was that to get that all cleaned up and sticking to the regulations that you had to stick to?
Extremely hard. It would have been a lot cheaper just to knock the whole thing down and start again.
I bet.
Obviously, we didn't want to do that. We really loved the history of the building. It's been a butcher shop since 1937. So, we really wanted to carry on that tradition and that town, the local town butcher shop that it has always been, and the history of it in this town is quite large. So that wasn't never an option. But yeah, obviously all the regulations and stuff that you have, the hoops you have to jump through to get through with heritage listing and stuff. It is a lot more difficult, but something that was well worth it, we feel. It was also quite difficult with council. I mean, when I first came into this business, the plan was always to get the DA through and do the renovations straight away. And, we thought 12 months, but it literally took us 6 years to get the approval.
Really? Wow.
It was a long 6 years working in the old little shop. Yeah, we got there eventually.
Yeah, you certainly have. Off to the side there, when I was inside, I noticed, I didn't see it when I walked in, but out to the side there was a little door off as you're looking at the counter to the left-hand side, and I think a young girl walked out of there. And that's your burger bar, is it?
It is, yeah. So we put a little, if you go back outside to the front, there's a window just sort of in the little side building, which is an add-on. And that's a little takeaway burger kitchen, which we sort of do, specialise in dry-aged cheeseburgers. But yeah, we do sort of about 4 or 5 burgers on the menu and just keep it real simple and classical and, fresh ingredients and try and keep it all flowing, really. It's just another little outlet. That space used to be a shipping container freezer. So when we sort of did the renovations, we moved all the freezers inside and there was that little empty space there. So we thought, well, why not? Makes sense. Yeah, it just sort of became a great little addition to the business.
The shop, is that open 7 days or do you just step to the 5.5 days a week?
We do 6 days. Saturdays we do slightly shorter. We close about 3:30 as opposed to 5:30, which we do most days. But yeah, being the country town and, having family and stuff, we want to try and keep it 6 days if we can. Give everyone a rest day. It's always nice.
Mate, I also remember seeing all your charcuterie. I love that stuff. I went over to Germany a few years ago to IFA and my mind was blown away then, and coming back and seeing what you're doing there, and I know the amount of work that goes into and time that goes into creating some of those products you do, mate. You're doing a great job. Everything from production and the packaging. A lot of people fall down in the packaging side of it because they don't sort of think that far ahead. They just want to sell the stuff, they've already got enough time in it. But what you've created there, you've got your brand, you've got everything. It looks great. How did that all come about? What drove you to do a charcuterie range like what you do?
Charcuterie has always been, I guess, a huge passion of mine, in the sense that when I was cooking in the restaurants, one of the restaurants that I did most of my time in, bought a lot of whole animal products, and we sort of needed a way to use up, in fine dining restaurants in those days, you couldn't put, blade and stuff like that on the menu because, people want, the premium cuts of that, or what they consider premium cuts. So we had this huge amount of meat that we had to use up. So I just sort of began playing with the curing and sort of to see what we could do with it, because otherwise you'd get in trouble for not using the meat. So we had to do something with it. And just the fascination of it all stemmed from there. And I sort of, when I was looking at the next step after cooking and what would be, I guess the dream was probably to do something, charcuterie or small goods, because I do really enjoy it, and it's still sort of keeping my hand in that cooking sort of side of it, in the restaurant sort of side of it as well, but not doing those crazy hours and night times every day and all sorts of stuff. So that sort of, at a young age, that sort of was like, well, that's a good way to steer the ship maybe. So yeah, when this butcher shop came about, it sort of just was a no-brainer that, nobody was really doing it up here. I mean, yeah, people like chefs and stuff will always do their own in restaurants, you find, but being so close to a winery and a wine region, which is a huge, like one of the oldest wine regions in Australia, there's no one here producing small goods, which, that goes hand in hand with wine, in my opinion. So you look at all the other, the Barossa and stuff like that, there's always someone, producing small goods and stuff, little local small good producer and stuff like that, which we didn't have in Hunter. So to me, it became this sort of no-brainer that, yeah, that's what I'd love to do. And look, it's been a process. It's not something that everybody even knew what was at first. And, to get people to sort of spend the money that, as you said, it takes time and, it's a lot of effort to do that sort of thing. So to get people to understand what their, the value for money in it, and it was a challenge at first, but, certainly it is coming a long way, and it's, it's always been a vision of mine, I guess, to as an addition to the fresh meat side of it.
I noticed that the sow rump that you had there had like about 2 or 3 inches of fat on it.
Correct, yeah.
What do you call that again? I can't remember what that was.
We just call it a rumpetto. So it's essentially when you make a prosciutto, you've got predominantly take the majority of the rump off the leg to cure it. So rather than just turn it into trim or something like that, we've started curing the rumps. We get a lot of them also when we make colatello. So it's sort of just became this beautiful muscle. In my opinion, pork rump is one of the most flavoursome and beautiful muscles in the pork leg. So we started curing it, and obviously with those, we get some from some local farms, some big old sow, like Berkshire sows, and the fat cover is just immense. Like it's up to 40, 50, 60 mils sometimes. Like it's insane. So rather than just take all the fat off, which is typically done for a back fatter and used for pork fat and stuff like that, I guess we thought we'd cure it using the same theory as, when you cure lardo and stuff, you thinly slice lardo and it just sort of melts in your mouth or, melts on your toast or whatever you have it on. So we thought, why not have the best of both worlds and leave that fat on the rump, and then you've got, this beautiful flavoursome piece of pork that just melts on your tongue, and then, a bit of the texture from the actual meat of the rump. So it's not everybody's cup of tea. I guess a lot of people go, oh, that's way too much for me. But I think once you try it and you realise you don't eat 150 grams of it in a serving, it's nice. It's a nice little luxury.
Yeah, I think my cholesterol's high enough as it is at the moment. So I'd have to, my doctor would be saying steer away from that. But yeah, like everything in moderation, I always tell him.
Yeah. Everything
in moderation. A little bit now and then doesn't hurt. No, it's an interesting cut. I'd never seen it used that way. Like, as you said, when you're doing a prosciutto, it's normally discarded and used elsewhere in the business, whereas you've found another use for it. A few years ago, I did a lamb prosciutto, and I dry-aged it I air-dried it for 18 months.
Yeah.
Lost a lot, obviously, but at the end of the day, I ended up with something that you'd slice up nice and thin, and it basically melted in your mouth. The colour, like deep cherry red colour, brownish if anything.
Yeah.
But man, I'd love to do it again, but I just don't have the time. It's something that's, as we said, it takes time. This thing is not just done overnight.
Exactly.
And seeing that process, when you go to other bigger businesses where you see hundreds or thousands of these prosciuttos hanging up in the ceiling, you go, wow, what an investment that is. So, there's that side of it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's not a cheap thing to begin, but anyway.
And you mentioned you source your pork locally. What about your beef and your lamb?
Yeah, both. We do. Well, we've been fortunate enough over the 7 years to sort of develop some really good relationships with some local farmers, a few more local than others. It is difficult because, we've always had the idea that we would love to use everything from the Hunter Valley, but the realisation and the reality of it is you can't buy the best lamb in the Hunter Valley, and you can't buy the best pig in the Hunter Valley because people just aren't farming it here. So, you've got to be realistic about how local we can go. Has always been a big thing for us, and quality has to come into play as opposed to just location. It's a huge thing as well. So we do get a lot of beef from a farm called Albion Farm, which is over at Woodville. But in saying that, we also then get some like retired dairy from down at Gippsland as well, because in my opinion, they're doing some of the greatest retired dairy on the market this day. Pigs we're getting from out near Stockton Piggle, so out the Orange or Cootamundra, sorry. Lamb was always a difficult one because we did have a guy that was local, was in the sense he was just in the next suburb down on the Hunter River, but the quality sort of did suffer a little bit, especially through that drought period. It was very dry in the Hunter, very hot. But the quality wasn't what we needed to be, and that sort of unfortunately fell through. So we ended up just using Breakout, which is, their quality is hard to beat, their consistency is hard to beat. But then we've since found a new farmer, or he actually found us, Naparoo, Australian Whites, and he's doing a fantastic product. So we've been getting deliveries from him. He also does beef as well, so we've been getting some Angus from him every now and then. They're sort of our main ones at the moment. We do buy a lot of beef out of the Manning Valley as well. They do a Marble Score 3 plus grass-fed range for us. That's sort of more what we use in our wholesale lines and stuff like that as well. And we use a lot of that for the dry age project. And sort of not as farm specific, I guess, as the stuff we buy direct from the farmers. But it's still an absolutely fantastic product.
The Manning Valley, all through that region, I've seen some beautiful beef come out of there, all grass fed, and then some of the marbling you get in some of their beef, you'd swear blind it's come off grain, it's just so rich. We were in we were at an event many years ago in the US, and I was slicing up some strippies there, and they were from Manning Valley, and the chef that I was working with, he said, "That's grain fed." And I said, "No, it's not, mate. It's not. Look at the box." And I said, "It's actually grass fed. What's in the box? It has to be what it is, you know." That statement's there, and he was just blown away because it sort of rivaled some of their choice and their better type of beef that they have over there. And
yeah, of course.
He was sold on it, actually. He started using it in his restaurant, and it was well, that was the whole point of us being over there for it. But you know, it sold him straight away as soon as he saw anything. Bang, grass fed. It's got to be better for you. Bang, it's got the marbling. We're used to that. So you know, the only difference he said was the size of the cattle, because their cattle are so much bigger than what we turn off at. So, awesome stuff.
No, it's a stunning part of the world.
You mentioned about lamb. I know we're 2/3 through winter now. So even though it hasn't been it's been a cold winter, but not a wet one, where we don't normally get a lot of water around in the winter months. But getting closer to spring, you got any plans for spring? Doing anything different with lamb through spring, or?
We don't necessarily do much different than what we normally do. So we use lamb all year round, obviously, as most shops do. But yeah, we sort of we age a lot of lamb as well, and we, you know, if we were to use small goods, we would be looking more sort of year older lambs, so last season stuff, which we'd like to pick up, you know, at the end of this time, or you know, in spring you can still pick up your old last season's lambs. But new season lamb always bloody great in the shop. So it's always interesting to see what farmers bring in, and you can literally see the shift, you know, through the products that they sell on. So
yeah, there's been a big, not a huge movement, but there's been a bit of a shift towards a lot of those heritage breeds, not just your Dorpers and everything, but your Suffolks and the larger breed of lambs that have been, I think a guy called John Bull's been playing around with down south. Big 40+ kilo carcasses coming through, and they've got an eye like a tennis ball on the loin chops and the cutlets, and they're starting to become more popular, and they are expensive, but people, I think, today are prepared to do a little bit more, like spend a little bit more when they're shopping for themselves, because the way the economy is at the moment, they can't really afford to eat out. So I think butchers are in a pretty good position now to sell that quality product, all those different sorts of things, whereas and like I said, people aren't going out to eat as much. Yeah. Michael, regenerative farming, you use a lot of that meat that's grown on those type of farms?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we use quite a bit, actually. Albion Farm, he was originally doing ducks, pigs and beef. He's now just moved to beef because it's sort of more of a hobby thing for him. It's not something he does full time. But we use all of the farms we're buying direct from the farmer. They're all in regenerative practices. I think we're sort of seeing a lot of movement of people, you know, searching out these farms, and from farmers' perspective as well, they're seeing the benefits as well. It's been happening for a long time before I've even had the shop, but certainly I think it's becoming predominant. We have customers that specifically want, you know, those products more so than what we used to. Well, we obviously used to just get people wanting grass-fed or grain-fed, but I think now people are asking even more questions on whether it be grass or regenerative or grass-fed. But yeah, it's certainly something that we do. But again, it's got to be that quality. Like we haven't yet found that it isn't the quality that we needed, you know, when they are using those farming methods, but it would still need to meet up to the quality that we want to be selling in the shop.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that's across everything that you sell. You like to sort of try and be able to lend that sustainability story across everything?
Yeah, 100%. You know, even with our small goods range, like the stuff that we're producing on a large scale, we made the decision, like even our bacon and ham, a long, long time ago, we made the decision that as an absolute minimum, that would be a free-range product. So, you know, a lot of people are using the cheaper bacon and the cheap pigs to produce that sort of stuff. But we have always said as a minimum that will be, you know, free range. So we get a lot of that stuff from Borrowdale's, our carton base that we can then produce in large amounts, and been selling a lot of that to, you know, large scale operations. And then anything on top of that we're doing for the shop with our whole animal is always from a regenerative farm that we know the farmer, so it's local. And that sort of range sort of tends to stay in the shop or for a few special customers, because obviously keeping up with the demand is a lot more difficult when you can only get sort of 2 or 3 pigs a month from somebody, as opposed to the 300 or 400 kilos of bellies is all you need to make bacon for one customer. So
getting back to charcuterie, to set the shop up to do what you want to do, what you wanted to produce, I suppose, What sort of machinery did you have to use? What have you got out the back there?
So now we're fortunate. We've got we've got 3 core rooms, which are all humidity and temperature control rooms, where they can both add or lower humidity to the room. We've got a vacuum sausage filler for, pumping the right sort of weights and stuff like that into things. And then obviously your mincer is pretty standard, but our bowl cutter is another thing we have now as well. But originally we had just one cabinet, like a little portable, is how we started. I had one single door fridge that had a little humidity control in it, and we would just sort of began pumping it out with that, which, we faced a lot of challenges as well. But the product that we were banging out of it was pretty amazing, considering what we had. We entered it into a few competitions and won medals, and that was pretty amazing to see it do that in that sort of setup in the old shop. So that sort of, again, made us think, well, hang on, maybe we can do this on a larger scale and get the right equipment and do it even better and more efficiently. So yeah, we're fortunate now that we've got plenty of core room space, stuff like that, to do it. It's not just one little tiny single door fridge. Yeah, but I mean, look, you've got to start somewhere, haven't you? Everyone has to start somewhere. It's not something that's cheap, and there is a lot of investment into it, in time and money and all this stuff. So you do have to start somewhere, and yeah, we're fortunate that we've got the right equipment now to really sort of grow and keep pushing it.
Gives you that point of difference. You're not doing what everybody else is doing or what the big ones are doing. You're small batch. It's quality. You've got better control over it, and plus also you're in an area. You've tapped on something in that area which is probably people have been looking for a long time.
Yeah, I think so. That's always been another thing for us. Well, for me personally, if people are going to make the effort to go to a butcher shop, then you need to have a point of difference from a supermarket or something like that. Like, well, what's the point of trying to compete with the supermarket? The supermarket's always going to win. Convenience will always win. So we need to offer them something completely different that they can't get anywhere else, or at least anywhere else around what we're doing. So that's always been a huge goal and role in our business and for our staff to achieve that as well.
Do you get many customers passing through? I know they've built you've got the big expressway running past you, but off in the distance. But do you get a lot of tourist trade, or is it all just locals that come to you? Or
we get a lot of tourist trade, actually. We've been fortunate, more so now than what we used to, since the renovations have been done. I've had people come from Queensland, and they say, we've heard all about the shop and we want to come and check it out. I was like, well, that's pretty crazy, but it's taken a long time to get there. But we can see the tourist trade come on a Friday, Saturday. It's if the valley itself is pumping with visitors and stuff, we tend to be really busy in the shop as well. So I think the word is getting out there to the wineries and stuff, and we're fortunate they'll send a lot of the customers to us and say, you have to go and check out this shop. And it's been well supported by that tourist industry as well. So they've sort of included us in there, and really helps us with our weekend trade, and then also to be followed by supported well by the locals as well is it's amazing. During the week they'll sort of do their shopping, and then the weekends the big tourists sort of people up for the weekend and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been really good.
Yeah, awesome. Mate, it's been great talking with you. I know you're itching to get back to the shop, but I've got 4 final questions. We've got a little segment at the end called the Fast 4. So we're going to shoot these off at you. So question number 1, what is your go-to cut of meat and best way to prepare it?
I have to go with bavette, or flat meat, I guess it's called in the butcher world. I've always been a sucker for it. My cooking career was cooking French food, so that sort of steak frites combination for me is any day of the week. There's a nice bit of bavette, Verde sauce and some chips. You can't go past it, really.
Yum. Dry age versus wet age, which one do you prefer and why?
Look, I see the benefits of wet aging to a degree. I don't personally enjoy the flavour of something that's been wet aged for an extreme amount of time. To me, it tastes not amazing. There's got to be dry aged in the flavour for sure.
Butchers pride themselves on their sausage range. What's the best-selling sausage in your shop? That's a tongue tie. What's the best-selling sausage in your shop, and what makes it so popular?
Our best-selling would probably be our lamb, rosemary and honey, which is probably a bit boring compared to what are some of the ones that you do get on the show. But yeah, the people love a lamb sausage, it's not my personal favourite, but we sell a lot of them. So yeah, we must be doing something right with it. Otherwise, the old, which is always popular, is the old beef jalapeno and cheddar these days.
Yeah.
Smoking world, everyone's loving those as well. So
yeah. And what's the strangest thing you've ever had in your fridge?
Oh, strangest thing I've ever had in what? like cool room or fridge at
Cool
home.
room. Cool room.
When I was working in a winery, it's probably not the strangest thing, but it was a bit bizarre. We had a dry age room set up, and someone put some vine clippings in it for their winery because they were grafting the wine, and it completely stunk out the whole dry age room. So it was like
Nice.
vine leaf dry age room. So that was sort of a bit strange. And yeah, I thought we were going to lose all the meat in there, but it turned out to be okay. But yeah, it was very shocking. I guess that's kind of strange.
Yeah, well, it's the story behind that, don't put vine leaves in your fridge.
Yeah,
Simple.
leave vine leaves out of your dry age room.
Exactly. Mate, look, it's been really good to talk to you and listen to your story. As I said before, mate, that shop is an absolute goal. It is beautiful. So I recommend anybody going through the area, drop in, but don't go there after 3 o'clock on a Saturday. But yeah, drop in there and have a look, and yeah, you'll be amazed at what Michael has done there. So, mate, thanks for your time today. Look after yourself, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Doug. Appreciate it, mate.
Thanks, Michael.
Cheers.